Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Well, today we ask, is Canada ready for a Sikh Prime Minister? We reveal more evidence of intelligence and law enforcement across North America closing in on India's involvement in transnational repression. Thousands join Nagar Kirtan parades around the world, and we report on a terrible Hindutva hate crime against Australian Sikhs. And finally, is an ethnic minority UK journalist investigating high-profile political figures being intimidated by the British establishment and our intelligence services? Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to all of our amazing viewers out there.
Indeed, and together we'll be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And as usual, we will be taking a look at some of your great comments which have been filling up below our videos. So thank you as always for those. Okay, on with the show. James, what are you going to start us off with today?
Well, let's start with a little bit of a fun bit here, and that is thousands gathering in Abbotsford and other sites around the world for an annual celebration. I'm just going to bring up a article here that is combined actually from the Abbotsford Times newspaper as well as the Times of India. And here we go. So thousands gathered last weekend for the annual Sikh parade in Abbotsford, and the annual procession, of course, as most already know, is the Nagar Kirtan procession, and that goes every year in Abbotsford, and that's just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia, for those who are unfamiliar with the area. Abbotsford is also home to one of the oldest and I would say smallest, but it's not actually the smallest in Canada, but definitely the oldest Gurdwara. So it has a very strong Sikh community there. And being part of Metro Vancouver, of course, thousands gathered, and there's an image, as you can see. They gathered in the streets there as they do every year, but also brought a lot of people from the Lower Mainland, Metro Vancouver, and further out in the Fraser Valley areas. So, of course, the parade is the annual event where they bring the Sikhism's holy scripture out, and they place it on a float and honor it while they bring it through town, singing devotional hymns. And it's not only Abbotsford, it actually was an event that's celebrated around the world. And I'm just going to go down and share a couple of images as well as far away here as Amritsar. Here is the going down, there we go. And of course they have a lot of celebration around it besides just the parade. And here some of the devotees are taking a dip. Now they actually were after a demonstration and event where they actually put on a display of historic martial arts known as the Gatka. And this is an ancient form that is brought forward, and really the people enjoy it, but it's also a way to bring together community. So although it is a Sikh event, it is also one in which they invite the entire community. So whether that be in Punjab, whether that be in Abbotsford, whether that be in Brampton or anywhere else in the world, it's an opportunity to share with the rest of the non-Sikh community and bring people together as one to celebrate not only the Holy Scripture, but to celebrate together as one community, regardless of faith, of background, of beliefs. And that's really what I think is the most important part of it all, is bringing people together and just celebrating as one whole community, which is something that unfortunately we don't see a lot of or enough of around the world these days. And that is people coming together as one, Angus. I'm sure that you agree how important that is for every community, no matter where they are in the world.
Yeah, I think it's great to see these parades because I think they serve two purposes. Firstly, obviously, the primary purpose is just a celebration amongst the community for the Nagar Kirtan parade. It's it's a very important ceremony. It's a very important date in the Sikh calendar. But the other purpose of these things is spreading awareness. It's raising the profile. It's actually, again, it's part of this educational process for the wider community to know, firstly, who Sikhs are, that they exist in our society and what they stand for, what they represent. And actually, again, equally as important is that they pose no threat to society. Because, of course, there's always that societal fear of the unknown. Who are these people? What do they represent? You know, and those are the barriers that are built between communities. And it's events like these that break down those barriers. It's all about saying, look, here's who we are. We are colourful, we're happy, we're very friendly, we are benign. And it spreads this whole message of Sikhi, which of course is one of the most benign messages in the world. And so events like this, particularly when they are so loud and colourful and so visual, which they are, they're a great messenger of Sikhi to the wider community. So I think when we see these parades around the world, not just in Amritsar, but of course in amongst our own communities out in the diaspora, I think it's a really important event for the community to reach out to the wider audience, and for that wider audience to say, okay, yeah, now we get it, now we get the message, now we understand who these people are and what they represent. So no, I think it's great to see. I think there's also what I do particularly like about these parades is the celebration of Gatka, this martial art, and again we refer regularly to the historic story, the culture of the Sikhs back in the Punjab and the Sikh Empire. And of course, the militaristic side to the Sikh culture is a very important and a very powerful part of Sikh culture. And Gatka is fighting with sticks. It's a martial art, and of course those sticks are there to represent swords. So it's keeping alive this deep attachment to military capability, to the power that Sikhs historically have held, and that intend to maintain. They intend to maintain this image. Look, we are not a weak people. We are a powerful people. We hold these strong connections to our military power, and we will not let these parts of culture disappear or get dissolved into time. And it also sends out just a very subtle message saying, look, we are a peaceful people. Our whole culture and our religion is based on peace and equality. And essentially being a benign part of the human population, but don't cross us, because we still retain this power. We still have our connections and our military capability should we ever need to call upon it. Of course, always in a defensive manner, but these martial arts always form a very subtle but very important part of these celebrations. So yeah, interesting, James. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and just the beauty of it. I mean, the representation, but it's also just another one of many Sikh-led events throughout the communities of the Lower Mainland, whether it's in Surrey, Abbotsford, Vancouver, Richmond. Yeah, it's just so many of the events that happen that bring community together we just can't overlook. So, but moving forward, let's take another story from Canada today that is gaining a lot of attention, and that is the NDP government has torn up the agreement that they have, and it's known as the Supply and Confidence Agreement with the Liberal government here in Canada. What does that mean? Well, it means that in the government of Canada, the Liberal Party with Justin Trudeau did not receive enough votes and enough seats to take a majority government in the last election. They came together with the Liberals and Jagmeet Singh to allow the merger of the two to have this supply and confidence agreement. And that brought together both parties to form the majority by Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, with a party agreement with Jagmeet Singh and the NDP, or the New Democrat Party. Now, this allowed a lot of things to happen in a very positive way for Canadians. For seniors, it helped to increase medical and prescription coverages that hadn't previously, and also for other Canadians, not just seniors, but that included things like free access to diabetes medications that were previously charged for. So this is a big thing. Also, the National Dental Program. And that again was something that was massive on the itinerary of the NDP or on their agenda. So they used the supply and confidence agreement to get these things and saying, okay, we're going to help you, Mr. Justin Trudeau, and the Liberal government, but in exchange, we want to work together to push these things through that were important to us. So now that this has actually been ended and Jagmeet and the NDP have ripped up this agreement, it is going to force an election more likely very soon, as opposed to when it was anticipated later next year. So this means that at any time they can call an election, and this I do anticipate happening. Now, when we look at the options, we have basically three options in Canada when it comes to the election, and that is Jagmeet Singh with the NDP. We have Mr. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, or we have Pierre Poilievre with the Conservatives. And people are tired of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. People are on the other side concerned with the aggressive and almost, we'll almost say that Pierre Poilievre has really turned a sour note towards the Conservative Party. Where does that leave us? That leaves us Jagmeet Singh with the NDP, and that may be the party that people turn to. Now, there have been recent polls by the media that Canadians are not ready for someone with a turban to be prime minister. And that may offend some people, me saying that. However, that is just the results of a recent poll that was taken. And I'm just bringing the news forward. But I think that the advantage right now for Jagmeet is that people are, again, tired of the same old with the Liberals, and they're not ready to go to the extreme other end with Pierre Poilievre, and that leaves Jagmeet in a strong position right now, and I think that may play into some of the reason for the ripping up of the agreement. It also has come up recently with the national rail lockout and the rail strike with the two major railways in Canada. Now, Justin Trudeau's government had stated that they would not use any of the powers of government to force the workers back to the job. However, they ended up moving forward and doing just that. So with that, of course, Jagmeet Singh is a very strong opponent of utilizing government resource or powers to force their way in between legalized and constitutionally protected negotiations between unions, workers, and of course the employers. So this has been a major step back for the NDP to say we had an agreement and now we just cannot support your interference in the right to negotiate fair and equitable contracts between employers and unions, and again the workers. So that really seems to have been a big sticking stone for Jagmeet to say no, enough is enough. We cannot do that. But again, together they did bring forward a lot of new policy. They brought in a lot of new programs to help Canadians. So it really was a real beneficial partnership for all of Canada to that point. Now, where we stand, I'm hoping that people will start to change their minds in terms of trusting Jagmeet to lead our country forward. I think that he has shown the ability, the dedication, and the commitment to our country and to the people of Canada. So, but again, that's just my thought on it. And what are your thoughts from overseas, Angus? What would you, are you even hearing anything about the impact of this agreement being ripped up over there yet?
No, not yet. And I mean, we've had over here, we've had not dissimilar situations with these supply and confidence agreements, where essentially governments have been propped up by minority partners just to ensure that they can retain or at least take power in some sort of, it's almost a coalition of sorts, but with a junior partner. And I would say almost with that exception, these always end up in recriminations. They never end well. I can't think of a situation, politically speaking, certainly here in the UK, and I'm sure probably even internationally, where these sorts of hybrid or quasi coalitions always end well. I mean, certainly we had, for example, here in the UK, we had the Conservative Party, the David Cameron Conservative Party, going back a few years ago, that was propped up by a junior partner. That was the Liberal Democrats. And to be honest, it was not a great government, and the Liberal Democrats actually, as the junior partner, lost out really badly in terms of reputation. They compromised far too far on their own principles. But specific to Canada, Jagmeet Singh, I think, it's a big question. Is Canada ready for a Sikh Prime Minister? Yeah, as you I think very reasonably point out, should we say, normal, middle class, maybe slightly right of centre Canadians accept a Sikh as a Prime Minister? I don't know. It's a big step. I think most of them could be very easily persuaded, because there's actually no reason why Jagmeet couldn't become a very good Prime Minister. It's just it's something new that we haven't tried before. It's almost, again, it's back to this fear of the unknown. So I think it's a very reasonable question to ask. I think it's not insurmountable, and again, it comes with track record. Jagmeet Singh has a track record that is now becoming better and better known. He's proving his credibility, so it's not impossible. I think what it would take is politics is always unpredictable. The strangest things can happen at the strangest of times. And quite often prime ministers find themselves in that very position almost through unpredictable sequences of events. And we've had prime ministers across the Western world who've suddenly found themselves as prime ministers without expecting to become prime ministers, purely because they just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So it could well be just through a weird sequence of events that Jagmeet could end up as prime minister. Who knows? Again, it could be part of a coalition government. Who knows? But yeah, I think it's, the trouble is with politics. I think there is a global issue, and certainly in the Western world, we've had a real problem over recent years, certainly in the last decade, where there's been an increasing disjoint, this increasing feeling of disenfranchisement, where the voting population have never felt further away from our politicians. They're feeling increasingly so that our politicians are just not representing what we believe and basically what we voted them in for. That's certainly happened here in the UK. And a prime example is our own Labour government, who've just taken power, who suddenly revealed that they're actually an extreme far left government verging on the communists in terms of what they've done. Literally in the last 6 to 8 weeks, it's shocked even their own voting base. Some of the draconian and dreadful decisions that they've been coming out with, not least the betrayals of the Sikh community. So and I think this is the problem in Canada, from certainly watching from afar, is that, we've had Justin Trudeau, a very liberal government. I'm no fan of Trudeau, and I've always said that, but he has been a very good advocate for the Sikh community. One must always credit him with that, and he has stood up to Narendra Modi, and again, he deserves a huge amount of credit for the courage it took to do that. But of course, he has been, certainly, I think during COVID times, he received a lot of criticism for his draconian, his actions, and certainly against the truckers, which again, ironically, being a liberal, his actions were, I would say, deeply illiberal, and the threats he made against the truckers, and that certainly reached the wider audience. Certainly over here in the UK, we heard about his actions against the truckers, which, for a liberal representative seemed quite contradictory. But the trouble with that, of course, is the backlash. The electoral backlash means it yo-yos back from, if you go too far one way, then there's always this massive swing, and usually an overswing to the other way. And suddenly we find ourselves potentially with a far right might be an exaggeration, but certainly a very right-wing government in terms of the Conservatives. And Poilievre, I mean, I don't know much about him, but what I have read is he is very much right-wing. He's been very critical of Jagmeet Singh to the point of almost being offensive. Some of the things I've read about him and his comments about the Sikh community have been pretty offensive, I would say. So I think there must be concern amongst the community that if there is this swing back towards the right, and certainly again, it's not far right, but certainly much more right, further right than centre. What does that mean for Canada? So one wonders, maybe the more central voters who tend to dictate the outcomes of these elections, maybe there is a chance that those in the centre ground and maybe even just slightly right of centre will say maybe Poilievre is a bit too far right for us. Maybe they could consider Jagmeet Singh. Again, I'm no expert on Canadian politics, but looking from afar, stranger things have happened, James.
That they have. And I just, one of the things I think that Jagmeet really has for him is that he's very energetic, he's very charismatic, he's very articulate and well-spoken, and he's also very active on social media in a positive way. So I think that could really lend support to him during the next election, which I think is going to be closer than we anticipated here.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting times in Canada over the next few months.
I'll send it back to you, Angus. What have you got for us today?
Well, okay, let us go back to an old story of Hardeep Singh Nijjar and Gurpatwant Singh Pannun, the attempted assassination on Gurpatwant and the very tragic killing of Nijjar last year, in June last year. Well, we have reported regularly that law enforcement and the intelligence agencies across North America, both in Canada and the US, have been working behind the scenes very heavily on these cases, investigating. The news that's been released has always been very, very limited. And of course, questions are being asked by the media, by journalists, by the public, saying, well, what's going on? What are you doing about this? And of course, they have to be very tight-lipped. They can't reveal too much. We reported recently about how there have been meetings, behind-the-scenes meetings between the US and Canada, the US and India about these things at very high levels to discuss, clearly, findings that have been found. And it was reported only just a couple of days ago that an interview, Global News reported an interview that they did with the National Security Advisor, or one of the National Security Advisors to the US President, confirming that the USA is working with Canada at every level to investigate India's role in the Hardeep Singh Nijjar assassination. And this guy, Jake Sullivan, who is an NSA advisor, made a statement in response to a specific question that Global News asked. And he did add that the attempted assassination of Gurpatwant Singh Pannun was also part of this ongoing investigations, jointly being carried out by the North American nations. So they are clearly linking these two, this assassination and the attempted assassination, which again implies that they see a common enemy on this one. And of course, there are other incidents and attacks and killings, indeed, that have occurred across North America that are being linked to these same investigations. And so I'll just quickly play this interview, because there's one or two interesting snippets that come out of this one. If you just take a look at his answer.
Hi, Mr. Sullivan. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Last year, Prime Minister Trudeau alleged that agents of the Indian government were involved in the murder of Canadian Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Has the U.S. provided any additional evidence to the Indians about this, and has the U.S. participated in the Indian investigation at all?
The U.S. and Canada have cooperated at every level, law enforcement, intelligence, and diplomatic. And we will continue to do so because, of course, as you know, and as we have said publicly and briefed Congress on, we had an attempted assassination in the United States as well. It was a tragedy what happened in Canada. I know there are ongoing law enforcement proceedings, investigations, and so I'll be careful in exactly how much I say, but I can say that we have good cooperation and coordination on these issues, and we take a very firm line on the question of attempted or actualized assassinations of individuals in our two countries, and it is our joint commitment, along with other allies, to stand firmly against that.
So, a very interesting interview. I mean, on the face of it, he actually doesn't say very much other than that I can't say very much. But actually, and we do have to take what we can from these, and we have to pick apart the words, obviously very carefully chosen words. And we do have to pick apart what the words that he uses very carefully just to try and get the messages, the underlying messages that are hidden between the lines. And I would say there are two very important elements that come out of this. First of all, the word cooperation. So I think that implies an awful lot. And it's no surprise. I mean, we have assumed this. But he has confirmed that there is an awful lot of cooperation going on between Canada and US law enforcement. And therefore, they are linking these two investigations, which, as I said earlier, does imply that there is a common denominator here. And of course, by implication, that means India. Secondly, he says, yes, I can't say an awful lot, but what he does say very firmly, and this I think is the most important message out of this, and this sends a very clear message, that we treat any assassination or attempted assassination on US or Canadian soil very seriously. We treat it very firmly. And that is basically saying, look, this is a message to whoever the perpetrators of these assassinations were, and clearly obviously implying India, look, we're not going to let you get away with this. We will treat these seriously. We are investigating them, and when we find out who is behind it, we will take action. Now, obviously what that action is, we don't know, and as we have said on several occasions, it's quite likely that action will not even be made public. It may be buried behind layers of diplomacy, but those messages behind those layers of diplomacy, behind the scenes, will be sent to New Delhi, if indeed New Delhi is implicated, with proof that those messages to New Delhi will be, we've caught you out this time. We will leverage this, and you will do as we say. Otherwise, we will make this evidence public, and you will pay the price globally in terms of your reputation, etc., etc. If India wants to be the superpower, yeah, we'll let you become the future superpower, a future democracy, etc. And you can sit at the top table, but you've got to play it our way, or we will destroy your chance. We will destroy your credibility by releasing this evidence. So it's a very clever game that these governments play behind the scenes, but they have to. And this is the way that it's always been played historically. We, the public, will only get a very sanitized version of events. We can only but interpret in our own way what actually is going on behind the scenes. But yeah, as I say, James, not an awful lot in a 1 minute answer on the face of it, but actually dig down. There is a lot being said there.
You've lost. There we go. Sorry about that. We seem to be working towards the cooperation there and more answers, but again, he's clearly stating that they cannot bring a lot forward in the public eye because of the legal proceedings that are happening in Canada. Of course, for anyone unfamiliar, which I don't think there are too many unfamiliar with the story, but there are 4 people charged in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, and they are facing the next court appearance in October. 3 of them are being held in British Columbia. 1 is in Ontario because of the fact that he was arrested in a very close proximity to a very high-profile Sikh wedding in the Brampton, Ontario area. And of course, which Mr. Pannun was expected to be at, but canceled at the last minute. So that is, of course, concerning. My thoughts on the next court appearance, though, is that it'll be brief and it'll be just another delay in the process, given that there's over 100,000 documents that have already been shared between the Crown prosecutor and the defense, and they expect to have to go through another 100,000 documents at least in the interim. So that's where that is. But again, we also know that there have been third country meetings between Canada and India when it comes to the Nijjar murder. So we've seen some people reassigned from the raw agency in coincidence or not, just in the same timing of these meetings that have taken place. And a lot of them have taken place in third countries or third party countries for whatever reasons. But yeah, it's definitely a story that we're going to be continuing to watch, Angus, and of course we'll report on all of the different aspects of the case and the concerns as we move forward with it.
Indeed, as I say, there's a bit of a vacuum of information, unsurprisingly, as the investigation continues. But these little snippets that do sneak out are very interesting to at least give us some reference points of how it's going. And clearly, it is very much underway, this investigation, and it does look like they are closing in on some key conclusions by all accounts. So. Let's move on to my next story, and this story is a bit shocking, actually. We don't talk much about our community in Australia, but here is a story that's come out recently from Western Australia in Perth, and it's a terrible story of Beadbi. That's a sacrilegious offence against the community. And Western Australia police have recently confirmed that they are now looking into an incident of Beadbi in Perth, which has actually caused outrage across the global diaspora. The incident was actually filmed by the perpetrator himself on a mobile phone, and the video has been obviously spread across social media, as these things tend to do, and it's found its way into Sikh social circles via TikTok and WhatsApp just only a few days ago. And the video depicts a man burning some of the sacred scriptures, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and carrying out other deeply disrespectful acts on a Gutka Sahib, that's a small composition of the Gurbani, outside and inside a Gurdwara. Now, of course, the Gurbani is, unsurprisingly, deeply sacred to Sikhs, and any written form of it is expected to be treated with the absolute utmost respect because it carries so much significance and weight amongst the community. And a Gurbani is also forbidden from being used decoratively, whether on any material. You can't show any photographs or films of it, etc., because the whole concept is to preserve its sanctity. So, of course, any offence, anything that attacks these scriptures in any physical form is seen as a deeply sacrilegious offence. And so this act of hatred was deliberately designed to inflame and provoke the Sikh community. And unsurprisingly, it has provoked global outrage and reactions from across the world, specifically from Australian Sikh groups and local authorities. Now, investigations have been coordinated between Australian Sevadars, that's selfless servants, and Western Australia Police. And what they have uncovered so far in this video, of course, they had to look at this video and try and work out certainly who was behind it and where it actually occurred. And they've identified the Gurdwara as the Gurdwara Sahib Canning Vale in Perth. And the actual video was filmed several weeks before it was actually released. And the original video did include parts that were recorded in India. And there was a name that was tagged in the video and is believed to be a reference to an Australian Sikh activists in a deliberate attempt to antagonise them. And it's also believed, although not confirmed, that the video was originally posted online in Germany. So it's a very multinational thing, this. Now, Australian Sikhs have been the target of a pretty aggressive anti-Sikh Hindu extremist Indian nationalist campaign. Hindutva have been very active in Australia in recent years. We know this. In the past, we've certainly reported on, for example, false flag attacks on Hindu temples across Australia, where graffiti was emblazoned across the walls of these pro-Khalistan and anti-Modi graffiti has been photographed outside these Hindu temples, and it was blamed on Khalistanis. In fact, this was investigated by Australian police, and they concluded it was the likely false flag efforts of a bunch of Hindutva activists who deliberately were trying to smear the local Sikh community by themselves painting this anti-Modi graffiti on the temples. So there is this very aggressive and very active Hindutva cell or cells operating in Australia. And they believe it's because of widespread Sikh criticism of India's current far-right regime under Modi, of course, and of course the genocides of 1984. And Hindutva have reacted aggressively online and in real life, actually on the ground, towards Australian Sikhs, raising these human rights abuses of India. And last year, Australian Sikh organisations released a joint statement about this issue, and particularly about propaganda deliberately trying to malign Sikhs. And this includes, for example, a petition that Hindutva launched in Australia demanding that Sikhs be deported and have Sikh practices banned in Australia. And a couple of years ago, one volunteer of Turbans for Australia was brutally attacked by Hindutva extremists for being involved with the organisation, which is critical of India. And Sikhs only make up just 2% of Australia's population. And some of the cases that have been, the recent cases, examples have been of Hindutva action and actions against and hate crimes against the Sikh community. There was a case of Vishal Jude, who was deported from Australia in 2021 for leading a Hindu extremist gang targeting Sikhs. And when Jude arrived back in India, he was given a hero's welcome. There are videos of this guy receiving a hero's welcome after his outrageous attacks on the local Sikh community in Australia. And of course, these issues are reflected across the diaspora, and of course, as we've reported in both the UK and Canada, and of course in the US. And for example, there was the arrest of 2 Hindu men found to be carrying knives near a Sikh space, with police citing they had, quote, intent to commit indictable offences. So again, 2 Hindutva extremists were found carrying knives around Sikh Gurdwaras. And meetings are ongoing. The politicians have got involved in this. And of course, one of the most high profile ones is the Greens MP David Shoebridge. And he even released a public letter that he sent to the Western Australia Police Commissioner to urge the incidents, particularly anti-Sikh incidents, and specifically this Beadbi one, to ask the police to treat these as serious targeted criminal acts, and of course and classify them as hate crimes. And a local Sikh councillor, Jagmeet Singh, has been quoted as saying the community must respond with a unified and urgent approach, and the police have got an ongoing investigation into this crime. So yeah, this recent video, and again, this is part of the evils of social media, where it gives a platform for these people, these Hindutva activists, to create these videos, these dreadfully sacrilegious hate crime videos, and spread them across social media, whipping up hatred again. Against firstly the Sikh community, but trying to unite Hindus against Sikhs and indeed Muslims and other communities against the Sikhs. It's all part of this coordinated effort online, obviously propped up and financed, we assume, by the Indian government and certainly the RSS, who are behind a lot of these things. And we have reported regularly about these farms, these bot farms, and these online groups, these Hindutva groups that operate out of India. And their sole purpose, their sole existence is to create videos like this, is to create propaganda, misinformation and hate against the Sikh community. Because of course, as we've said on many occasions, they see the Sikh community as a threat to their existence. So, James, unfortunately, yeah, we've reported a lot in Canada and in the US and of course in the UK, but it seems Australia is no stranger to this dreadful hate crime that is spreading across the diaspora.
No, and it's, as you touched on, something that we've reported time and time again is the negative side of social media and access to it. And you combine the bots that you touched on that we've talked about many a times, all of the people who are sitting in dark rooms somewhere for government and carrying out these misinformation campaigns. And then you've also got to combine in there these idiots that are sitting at home and utilizing social media as a platform. And of course, when I say that, I mean the people who are spreading the misinformation and just trying to spread venomous hate between different parties for the simple fact that they get the clicks, they get the likes, they get the followers, and pushes them up in these social media algorithms. And of course, clicks mean money to these people, but more, I think it's about for some people that are sitting in a dark room in their mother's basement, it makes them feel relevant in today's society because they have nothing else going on except to, again, try to divide communities, create hate, and just feed into the narrative that's being put out by governments such as Modi's coming out of India. So it's it's a sad state, and we need to, as I touched in the first story, come together more of a united world, as opposed to allowing it to continue to divide us, and but to disrespect the the culture and the Sikh people this way, I find is unacceptable. So.
Yeah, and it is a perpetual fight against misinformation, and of course it's not just social media; it's the mainstream media as well. I mean, I'll give another example. Something popped into my inbox, I think overnight, and it was one of the Indian mainstream media, and it was in Hindi, so I couldn't read it other than the headline, which was in English, which basically said that the attack on Nijjar and Gurpatwant Singh Pannun attempted assassination were false flags created by Western intelligence. They were false flag attacks just to try and turn negative attention towards India. I mean, which again, I mean, incredible. But this was from a mainstream news outlet, which again, that's why we have to exist to provide an alternative narrative, and of course hopefully the truth, which does lead me on, interestingly, to my final story of the day. And this is a very concerning story, and it is linked to quite a large degree to the Sikh community, because a lot of news outlets in the Sikh community have been inspired by independent investigative journalists, particularly from those from ethnic minorities, who've had the courage and the ability to stand up and go out and investigate stories, investigate the truth, and to provide an alternative narrative to what may appear in the mainstream. And of course, as we report, the mainstream is always controlled by those who control the mainstream media, the wealthy and the powerful, and in many cases governments. And yeah, I mean, we talk about in the West how independent our press is. Actually, how independent is it? Well, it's not specifically independent, but what we do have is still have a free press. And when that free press is intimidated or suppressed, that's when we must raise the red flags. That's when the alarm bells must signal. And we have a story that's come out, and it's one of our very own here in the UK investigative journalists, a lady called Samantha Asumadu. She's a freelance journalist, and she's had a very good track record in digging up stories and investigating things that frankly needed to be investigated, that the mainstream media have either been too afraid to touch or been instructed not to touch. And she's reported several instances recently of what she calls digital intrusion. Now, she's a seasoned journalist with a background working with some pretty major outlets, mainly on the left wing, The Guardian, CNN, Al Jazeera, for example. And she's recently reported hacking attempts on her social media accounts and the discovery of suspected tracking devices linked to her phone. So this isn't just simple hacking into her emails and stuff. This is something a little bit more sinister, something that does imply something a little bit more organised and from a higher level. So it's not just some hacker in Russia, just being mischievous. This implies something a little bit more deeper. And for example, 3 of her Twitter accounts, her X accounts, all publicly associated with her, were breached, and all those breaches were traced back to IP addresses from the same country. Unfortunately, it's not revealed which country that is. And this occurred just one day after she published a thread on X scrutinising the activities of far-right and far-left figures, including Claire Fox, one of our former MPs, and Baroness of Buckley, somebody from the House of Lords, our second chamber, suggesting that recent far-right riots in England and Northern Ireland were coordinated by influential pro-Brexit organisations. And she said that my third article, the most sensitive one, was pending release when something bizarre occurred. Within 45 minutes, all my associated Twitter accounts were hacked. So clearly a very coordinated, very well-organised attack. After this, she scanned her phone for what are called AirTags. Now, I don't use an iPhone myself, but apparently these are things that can track your mobile phone. And she actually said, and for the first time, I found 2 of these AirTags on her phone. She didn't put them on, somebody else has put them on her phone. And the situation mirrors an incident 2 years earlier when she suspected that her laptop had also been compromised. She believed somebody had actually been able to get remote access into her laptop. And in another unsettling episode, she recounted how photos that she took with a contact that she suspected could have been surveilling her, these photos mysteriously disappeared from her phone when she herself had not deleted them. Fortunately, she kept a backup on the cloud to prove that those photos had existed in the first place. Now, she hasn't ruled out the possibility that British security services may be involved, given the fact that she's doing her investigative work, including her interviews with Tom Fowler, a man with deep insights into state infiltration of activist networks, and her inquiries sent to prominent figures and outlets investigating the recent riots in the UK. She also thinks that her past activism against the Nationality and Borders Act, that's one of our major pieces of legislation that came recently, which she believes disproportionately targets marginalised groups, has also made her a target for surveillance and far-right agitators. And we do know that security services and special branch, for example, followed both activists and journalists. And she is, of course, both, so she remains hyper-vigilant. And it could well be an attempt to intimidate her. She does, of course, feel paranoid, and it could be an attempt to dissuade her from publishing sensitive investigations. Now, unfortunately, in the UK, despite us being a democracy, we do have a troubling history of government surveillance of both activists and journalists. And, for example, recently, the Assistant Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland claimed that a covert unit within the police monitored the phones of journalists and lawyers. Their phones were tracked. The records were used to identify connections with legal professionals and journalists. And more recently, and that raised a lot of controversy, we had a new piece of legislation just 8 years ago, the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016, which was basically called the Snoopers Charter, allowed intelligence agencies, those that we have here, the MI5 and MI6, allowed them to collect and search confidential journalistic material obtained through bulk hacking operations without needing prior independent approval. In other words, there was no judicial oversight. In other words, there wasn't a judge. That previously they had to get a judge's approval to allow them to do this. Now they can just do it with absolute carte blanche. They have no judicial oversight to do this, which has raised serious concerns. And also, we do know globally there is this spyware called Pegasus, which is exclusively sold to governments. And this piece of software allows governments to spy on journalists, politicians and activists. And in fact, the group, the NSA group who created this Pegasus spyware, have actually been blacklisted by the US government because of its misuse investigating journalists. So it's concerning. Right. These acts represent a clear and deliberate attempt to intimidate and silence investigative journalism, particularly when this lady's work challenges powerful interests and addresses contentious issues. We must always be vigilant of things like this. We must always hold our own governments and our own establishment to account. And as we've reported, we are always deeply suspicious, certainly here in the UK, of the British establishment and its connections to India, its collaboration with India's intelligence services and its law enforcement and our own law enforcement. We've referred regularly to the Midlands Police Force, West Midlands Police Force, and their intimidation in many cases of the Sikh community locally. Raids that have happened that have clearly been after collaboration with Indian intelligence. So we have a deep suspicion, and we must always be able to hold our own governments to account. And our own investigative journalists, when they get too close and they are asking uncomfortable questions, why are they being intimidated like this? One has to ask these questions. We must be able to continue investigative journalism, particularly from our ethnic minorities. They must not be intimidated. If they are hacked, if they are surveilled, if their phones are monitored, if their laptops are being hacked into remotely, this is not a good sign. Yes, our intelligence services must have our nation's interests at heart, but those powers must not be abused. If there is any signs that these powers are being abused, we must, the public and outlets like us, must call this out and say, no. We accept there is a line that you must stay behind to protect our national interests, but when that line is crossed and you start, if our journalists are investigating your abuses, they must be allowed to do this, and we will call out when you cross that line. So James, I guess the same situation will be happening in Canada. It is up to us to monitor these things.
Absolutely, and I mean the freedom of the press and the protections that go along with journalism, and especially investigative journalism. I mean, those are cornerstones of any democracy to make sure that they are paying attention to what's going on, but also to hold to account the people who are doing wrong within the system. We've seen the proverbial shit hit the fan in the U.S. when they were found to be utilizing certain tracking software and hacking software to monitor many people around the globe, not only Americans but also others of prominence throughout the world. So again, it is just another time where we see people trying to use their influence, their power to really curb the actions of journalistic integrity. So it's got to be protected if you're going to keep a open and trusted democracy.
Yeah, and we do need our intelligence services, and they do an incredible job protecting our national interests, so we always support them. However, they ultimately are a tool of the establishment, and the question is the establishment representing the best interests of the people of our nations? That's the big question. That's where this disjoint seems to be growing, where people are questioning, for example, here in the UK, the British establishment, are you actually representing the people of Britain? That's what we need to question. Now, it is the British establishment, the Canadian, the US establishments. It is these establishments that we need to hold to account. They're the people we need to turn our lens upon and saying, yeah, we know you exist, but are you really acting in all our best interests? That's the big question. And likewise, that's reflected across India as well. So, okay, let's rush into our comments section as time marches on, as always. Now, comments from our recent show, Sound of Sikh Thunder, where we reported on the growing voice of Sikhs in the Punjab. And Harbinder Sandhu made this lovely comment. I just wanted to this just as a representative comment of many that we did receive. Welcome both James and Angus back. Hopefully you enjoyed your break, although a short one. And yes, thank you for these comments and for the many comments that were very similar to this. Yes, we did enjoy our break. It is great to be back. Yes, it was far too short, but we couldn't keep away. We have a responsibility to get our message out. We couldn't stay away for too long. Unfortunately, as you may have noticed, I did catch a bug whilst I was away. So I've been coughing and spluttering my way through. Not a great holiday in that respect, but I soldier manfully on. Azad Singh. Now this comes back to our ongoing discussions about Sikhs on screen on both television and the cinema. And Azad makes the comment: we want to see more real Sikhs on screen instead of fake Sikhs and Punjabis. Also, we want to see more Sikh-related cinema instead of fake Punjabi Indian ones. Now, this actually is an interesting distinction that we haven't drawn yet, James, of course, is that, yeah, we're saying, yeah, we need more Sikhs on screen. Somebody's come back and said, yeah, there are plenty actually Sikhs on screen that we didn't know about. But this is actually, this is a bit more subtle, a nuanced comment to say, actually, many Sikhs that we do see on the screen aren't what he calls, or this person calls, real Sikhs. They're the fake Sikhs and Punjabis. And likewise, a lot of the so-called Punjabi cinema actually isn't representative of true Punjabi culture, true Punjabi people, etc., etc. So I think, James, like we said over the last few days, the responsibility then is on the Sikh community. If you're not seeing it out there, get out there and produce it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I stated, there's so much opportunity in the Western media, especially within Canada, with different initiatives for Sikhs who have never really thought about maybe being in entertainment to really jump in and get their feet wet, get experience within the industry, and then build your own career to really take it in a direction to tell powerful and impactful stories that can impact the future and educate on history. So
yeah, as the industry has proved over and over again, you don't need a huge amount of money to get a message out there if that message is powerful enough. I mean, I can use a great example is that horror film. I can't even remember its name now. What was it called? Anyway, it was a horror film. It was filmed on cheap cameras, and it had lots of this camera effects where they've just looked up the face like this. And it made millions in the box office, and it cost something like £1,000 to produce. But because the story was that powerful, it got out there. And there are so many powerful stories in Sikh culture and Sikh history that they sell themselves. All it takes is the motivation to people to put those stories on camera. It doesn't have to be that professional a production. The story itself will carry it. Yes, of course, to be the next Bollywood or the next Hollywood, you need billions of dollars. Yeah, fine. But they all started somewhere. There is no reason that the Punjabi filmmaking community can't just set up GoFundMe pages, all these pages, just get enough money to put something down on film. It's very accessible, as we've said. Just put these little projects together, because it only takes one of these. You put 100 projects together, it only takes one to gain traction, to be a success, and that message gets out there. So it's really all about motivation. It's never been easier to make a film. Cameras these days are not that expensive compared to how they used to be. And it just takes a group of friends to get together, write a script, put a film down. The stories are there, the raw material's there. It just takes the community to get together and put it together and get the messages out there. That's all it is, James, as we've said. So, right,
absolutely. And I think the movie you were referring to there was the Blair Witch Project.
Thank you. That's it. The Blair Witch Project. It was on the tip of my tongue. The Blair Witch Project, an absolute classic case in point. Cost nothing to put together. It made millions at the box office because it was just a great story. Right, Manjit's comment. I love this comment. Yeah, this is a very subtle and almost a very philosophical comment, but it's actually a very powerful comment in its simplicity. Believe in diversity, and also in true sense, also power in unity. And just in other words, this comment says there is power in diversity. And I'll use Khalistan as a platform for this. Khalistan will be a diverse nation, and its power will be in its diversity. It will be open to any people of all backgrounds, of all faiths. But there is power in unity, absolutely, because even though that Khalistan's population will be diverse, it will be united, it will be unified under one flag, and it will be all aligned with a common purpose and a common philosophy. And so, yeah, this very simple comment is there is power in diversity, but there is also power in unifying that diversity. So subtle nuance, but I just love the simplicity of this comment, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, it speaks for itself in very, very powerful ways, something that we talk about all the time.
Yeah, Manjit, thanks for that comment. I love that one. Okay, Jasvinder, this is a bit of an indulgence for Jasvinder. He made lots of comments, and a lot of them were very, very good comments. So I thought, well, let's dedicate a whole section to Jasvinder's comments. Hi, Angus and James. Do you know that India attacked the most sacred place of Sikhs, Darbar Sahib, in 1955? Absolutely, and this did, of course, I did know about this, and let me just quickly give you a quick summary of this, because it is worth repeating. Of course, 1984 was that terrible attack by Indira Gandhi's government on the Golden Temple, the Harmandir Sahib, which ended up with tens of thousands of innocent people losing their lives. But in 1955, the Punjabi Suba movement was a very active movement, and of course it was the forerunner of the Khalistan movement. And the Punjabi Suba movement was all about an independent, autonomous Punjab, and of course it came after partition. Of course, during partition, Nehru and all the politicians at the time made these huge promises, as we've said on many occasions, to the Sikh community. Yes, you will have your own homeland, and we will grant you autonomy, etc., etc. But as it turned out, post-partition, all those promises were betrayed, etc., etc. We've repeated that story on many occasions. So, of course, as a result of that betrayal, the Punjabi Suba movement grew. Again, the forerunner of the Khalistan movement. And it was launched by the Punjabi-speaking people, because, of course, the Suba movement was aimed at creating an independent homeland based on language. Of course, the Punjabi language. It wasn't just Khalistan as such. It was like Pakistan became an Islamic nation. Likewise, what became East Pakistan. Ultimately Bangladesh, and of course Hindu-dominated India. So of course the Punjab was going to be a Sikh-dominated, a Punjabi-speaking dominated land, and that's why the Suba movement came into effect. And of course they grew in power, their voices grew louder, and of course, once again, they became a bit of a thorn in the side to the Indian government. So as a result, on the 4th of July 1955, police forces forced entry into the Golden Temple, where of course the super movement had based themselves at that time. Thousands were arrested and injured. Once again, it was a violent intrusion into the Harmandir Sahib, and they took the entire group into custody. Thousands, of course, were arrested, and the Akal Takht Jatadar at the time, Lakbir Singh Road, said fire was opened at Akal Takht and the Golden Temple, and many Sikhs were killed. So yes, unfortunately, on a much smaller scale, but in 1955, as you rightly point out, Nehru's government did launch an attack on the Golden Temple. So the precedent was set, and it was followed, of course, just a number of years later in 1984 with that horrendous and outrageous attack on the Golden Temple in 1984. So thank you for pointing that out. And then, of course, you make the comment that referring to Amritpal Singh, an elected MP has more credibility than a Supreme Court judge. Yeah, a debatable comment, but certainly Amritpal Singh is an elected MP, a Supreme Court judge. Supposedly, in a normal democracy, has got to that position through decades of experience and maturity and capability. But unfortunately, it is appearing in India that this might not be the case. And I think this really is the root of your comment, is that Amritpal Singh actually does carry more weight, democratically, of course, than a Supreme Court judge. And he's been kept in jail because he's a Sikh. Well, he's not just because he's a Sikh. He's being kept in jail because he dares question the Indian government and hold the Indian government to account. It is India's shame. And of course, the final comment: since 1947, India has discriminated and ill-treated Sikhs and taken its natural resources, the land and the water, the riparian rights, and Punjab must be liberated. Absolutely, James. I think these comments, in 3 comments, sum up just about everything that we've talked about for over a year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. In the last part of that, that Sikhs know how to rule its country. And as we touched in at the top of the show today, it's quite possible we could see Sikh leading Canada as a country as well. So you never know.
Who knows? Who knows? It's going to be an interesting year ahead. And then final comments. SSI Singh says, is there not a good uni in India for students? Yeah, this is a good comment. This refers to the visa issue, James, we talked about. Of course, Indians flooding into the West, not just Canada, but of course the UK we talked about, and the US, trying to get into Western nations through visa programs through the universities. Yeah, I'm absolutely sure that India does have very, very good universities. In fact, I know it does have some very, very good educational establishments, but it's not really about the education, is it, James? I think it's more about the visas to get into Western countries.
Absolutely. And then there's also the accreditation standards for international positions, that it is difficult for some universities to get that accreditation where, for example, doctors and nurses, where they have the international skills that are actually recognized by Canada, the US. Some of the more higher paying countries will say for medical practitioners or engineers or scientists and such. So there's also that aspect as well. So it's tough to get the accreditation, but I'm sure there are amazing universities in India for different purposes. So.
And certainly knowing the history and the deep, rich, wonderful history of India, I'm absolutely, even without doing any research, I can almost confidently say there will be some very, very well-renowned establishments in India. But maybe that's something we'll report on in the future. But thanks for that comment. SSI Singh, final comments. Once again, my comments have disappeared. And Binti Kala comes in mine too, and other people have upticked that comment, implying that yes, other comments have disappeared. Oh, James, what do we do? There's nothing we can do other than just please keep your comments coming in. If yours don't appear, just give it a little while, because sometimes it can take a while for YouTube to share the comments. Refresh the page, make sure that you're not watching an old cached copy of the page. If they still haven't appeared, try again. And as we said before, if your comments just will not appear, email them to us, and we'll take a look through the emails at the comments as well. So, But yeah, unfortunately, we are an independent news outlet. We are holding the Indian government to account, and they don't like that, as we know and as you know. So, of course, we will always be up against this. But we can fight back by reporting daily, reporting the truth. And you are wonderful and supporting audience. Keep your comments coming in. Keep your support coming. Spread the word, because the more people that listen to us, the more people that watch us, the more the truth gets out there. So thank you once again for your comments. But unfortunately, time has once again beaten us. You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do appreciate them. And as you know, we do love having a good old discussion about them afterwards. So keep them coming in. As I said, you can email us directly at message@satellitetv.com on anything you'd like to bring to our attention or anything that you don't want to put in the public comments. But unfortunately, we must draw the programme to a close. We must say goodbye. It is a goodbye from me, and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone, and have put your comments up there about Jagmeet Singh and what your thoughts are about possibly having a Sikh as the leader or the next leader of Canada. I'd love to hear from you.
One can but hope. Thanks for watching. We will see you next time.